Adam Smith of Washington. He is the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us. There are Republicans who are horrified by the Witkoff call. We mentioned Mitch McConnell and Don Bacon. Don Bacon wants Witkoff to be fired. Are there any other voices in the GOP conference that are demanding the same? And could that change things?
Well, this is a crucial part of this. Republicans in Congress have actually been relatively strong on standing up for Ukraine. It's about the only thing that they've shown any pushback on what Donald Trump has been doing on a wide range of issues. But it is an important point. We've had strong support in the votes that we've taken on the House floor, stronger support now from Republicans for Ukraine than when Biden was president. And that pushback, I think, has had influence in the Trump White House. I mean, the biggest problem is within the Trump White House, we don't really have a Ukrainian advocate. We've got certainly the pro-Russian side of it led by J.D. Vance, and then you've got people like Marco Rubio and some others who don't want to be seen as having abandoned Ukraine, but that's not the same thing as being an aggressive advocate. That's how this ridiculous peace plan got sort of put forward in the first place, is nobody who was in on it was there to stand up for Ukraine. Now, once it came out, Republicans in Congress did step up, and we've seen the backtracking. But yeah, that's a real problem. Who has the ear of the president and the key negotiators to actually stand up for Ukraine? And I completely agree with what Max Boot said. I won't repeat it at length because I've said the exact same thing. The key to this is putting pressure on Putin. And instead, what the Trump administration wants to do is give Putin a pass and put pressure on Zelensky. And not only is that bad for our interests, but it's also bad for actually getting to an end to this war.
Do you see Marco Rubio as being able to navigate within this administration to, if not advocate for Ukraine, but maybe block Russia from achieving their loftiest goals?
Yeah, maybe. I think that's kind of what happened in the last 5 or 6 days as they, managed to walk back the offer that was put out there in the first place by Trump. But again, from what I've seen, I think the Secretary of State National Security Advisor seems more focused on what's going on in Venezuela than he does on what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. So it's a very weak link to have. I mean, the strongest link we've had is, as mentioned, Don Bacon, some others in Congress who have been really forcefully pushing back. But sadly, they're not actually in the White House to push the day in and day out negotiations. So Rubio can stop the worst stuff from happening, perhaps. But the things that need to happen we're still not getting there with this administration.
Max Boot was talking about the end of the North Atlantic Alliance. I know you alluded to that. Do you really think that this is going to be the end?
Well, I don't think it's going to be the end. It's not an on-off switch. It's not like we have alliance one day and the other day we don't. But already that alliance has been weakened to the detriment of U.S. interests. We do not have the same partnership with Canada or with Europe that we used to. They will be far less willing to support us on trade, on foreign policy, on national security items. It will weaken the United States. Look, I had a very revealing conversation when I was in China recently, the competition between China and the U.S., and someone very intelligent said, look, the 3 great advantages that the U.S. has over China are, number one, our partners in our alliances, which China doesn't have. We've had these built up certainly in Europe, but all across the world. If we lose that, then that weakens us in that competition against China, Russia, Iran. The other 2 were immigration, people wanting to come to the U.S., which, of course, Trump is taking a blowtorch to as well. And then lastly, our research, our scientific ability, the investments we make in our universities, which, again, Trump is doing everything to undermine. So all of these policies make us weaker. We need more friends. It's a multipolar world. We're not going to dominate the world. We need partners. We need allies. Trump's undermining them.
What is Dan Driscoll doing in this scenario? He's the Army Secretary, but he's turned into something of a special envoy himself. How do you interpret it?
Well, that's fascinating. Actually, I've worked with Secretary Driscoll quite a bit. As Secretary of the Army, I've found him to be a very intelligent, competent person. We're working on acquisition reform, getting the military to innovate more rapidly. I think the Army's been a leader on that. Driscoll's been a leader on that. He strikes me as a vastly more competent human being than Secretary Hegseth, that's for sure. Whether or not he knows anything about negotiating with Russia and Ukraine is a different question. He doesn't seem to have been pushing that in the right direction. But I think it's really telling. I think about where Secretary Hegseth stands at the Pentagon. It's not as high as his title would suggest. So I have confidence in Driscoll as Secretary of the Army, as a lead negotiator for peace between Ukraine and Russia. He seems to be more likely to be led around by either President Trump or worse, Vice President Vance, and let Putin push him around the same way they have.
Well, that's the question I was going to get to, J.D. Vance of this. Driscoll's meeting with J.D. Vance today. What is his role in these negotiations? I mean, we remember very clearly J.D. Vance admonishing Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office, saying he hasn't even said thank you once. He seemed to be the attack dog in that situation, that scenario. What influence does J.D. Vance have right now?
Yeah, a couple of good points about that. And sorry, I'd forgotten for the moment. Yeah, that's the one downside of Secretary Driscoll is he seems to have a very close relationship with the vice president. Look, I mean, Vance has been very, very out front about the fact that he is trying to get the U.S. to abandon Ukraine. And he works away at that wherever he can, and that's a problem. And if Driscoll's closer to Vance than he is to anybody else in the administration, that does not bode well. And then look, I mean, Vance was over at the Munich Security Conference chastising Europe about free speech while promoting Putin in Russia, because you know how much free speech they have in Russia right now. I mean, I think Vance's view of foreign policy is a direct threat to U.S. interests. How much influence he has? It varies from week to week, but it's a lot more than I'm comfortable with.
All right. Adam Smith, ranking member of the Armed Services Committee in the House. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thanks for the chance. I appreciate it.
And we've got some breaking news we're following out of Hong Kong. A deadly fire has torn through several high-rise apartment towers, killing at least 30